Haruki Murakami was born in Kyoto in 1949 after World War II that devastated Japan. But Kyoto remained relatively unscathed, partly due to its historic value and partly because it had no military significance. He grew up in a house with two literature teachers as parents, in a city where people think they are special because the city was Japan's continuous capital for 1,100 years. In Japan, Kyoto people are considered pompous and mostly uptight and strict, which meant the little Haruki couldn't wait to get out of the stifling atmosphere. Growing up, he read a lot of Western literature, mainly American, Russian, and French. He studied drama at Waseda University in Tokyo. After graduating, he opened a jazz bar in Tokyo with his wife Yoko, and they decided not to have kids. In 1978, during a baseball game, a divine message came to him and told him to be a writer. A year later, he published his first novel, Hear the Wind Sing. It's about a memory of a wild summer in 1970s with all these strange things like a girl without a little finger. In 1980, he published his second novel, Pinball 1973, about a man's obsession with, you guessed it, pinball, a real boy and his toy. In 1982, he published his longer novel, A Wild Sheep Chase, which propelled him as a serious novelist. It is a kind of detective story in the underground world to find a sheep with a birthmark. These first three novels are often referred to as Rat Trilogy due to the character Rat appearing in all. In 1985, he wrote Hard-Boiled Wonderland and The End of the World, a parallel narrative that takes the bizarre and surreal to an extreme. Well, the end of the world kind of extreme. His fame was growing, so he felt uncomfortable with the attention, so in 1986 he escaped Japan for some peace in Europe and then America. In 1987 he published Norwegian Wood, about a boy nostalgically remembering his relationships with two different girls. This novel made him very famous and rich. In 1988 he wrote Dance, 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 a sequel to A Wild Sheep Chase. It's about a man trying to return to the past, but things have moved on and only dreams remain. In 1992, he wrote South of the Border, West of the Sun, about a boy and a girl who meet again after many years and have to decide whether to rekindle the past or continue with their current lives. In 1995, he moved back to Japan following the Kobe earthquake and published Wind Up Bird Chronicles. This is a big one. It deals with real social issues like war crimes committed by the Japanese in China, but it still has all the strange and bizarre things like the search for someone missing, or sitting in a well, or a body mark that has special power. Here, real is infused with the surreal. In 1999, he wrote Sputnik Sweetheart about a search for a missing girl, unfulfilled love, and struggle between individual freedom and social conformity. A lot of the novel takes place outside Japan, namely in Greece. In 2002, he wrote another big novel, Kafka on the Shore, about a boy named Kafka escaping from his tyrannical father, just like the real Franz Kafka who hated his father. Again, in this novel, we have a character who can talk to cats. In 2004, he wrote After Dark about night work, prostitution, dreams. In 2010, he wrote 1Q84. This title is taken from George Orwell's novel 1984. In Japanese, the letter Q and number 9 have the same pronunciation, so you can read it as 1984. Two parallel worlds and a religious cult and the journey of characters to find what is real and what is not. In 2013, he wrote Colorless Tsukuru Sasaki and His Years of Pilgrimage. It's about a man who has confronted his past and old friends to understand the mystery of their rejection of him. This novel became a bestseller around the world. I personally like this the least of all his works. That says more about me, I guess. In 2018, he wrote Killing Commendatore. It is about a painter who, after divorcing his wife, moves into another painter's house where he dives deeper in history of Japanese invasion of China. In a sense, it's somewhat similar to Wind Up Bird Chronicles that deals with real socio-political issues, but has all the surreal, bizarre, the hallmark of Murakami. He has also written 6 collections of short stories and 12 non-fiction books. What I talk about when I talk about running is about his running habit. He wakes up at 4 a.m. like the German philosopher Immanuel Kant and writes for hours before going for a run. Underground, another non-fiction book, is about the aftermath of the gas attack in Tokyo Underground in 1995. He interviewed the victims and witnesses to understand their experiences. He wanted to really know how it felt to be there and then. Murakami has been writing for 40 years, non-stop. If writing is a battle, Murakami is a very disciplined, regimented, and successful soldier. His themes are wide-ranging from suicide, water well, death, consciousness, love, loss of mother or lover, and life's choices. Now I'll tell you all about his writing style and storytelling techniques. Music. He writes while listening to music, so in his writing world or imagined world, he is like the kind of god that says, "Let there be music." His characters obey. During an interview with The New Yorker in 2018, he said, "I have learned so many things from music about writing. I think there are three important elements: rhythm, harmony, and free improvisation. I learned these things from music, not from literature. And when I started to write, I tried to write as though I were playing music." Also, he used to run a jazz bar in Tokyo and has a deep interest in music as an artistic form. There's a lot of similarity between jazz improv and Murakami's free-flowing writing. You will find music in nearly all of his novels, even some of the titles come from song titles. Norwegian Wood, for one, is from a Beatles song. Escape. Fundamentally, Murakami's writing is an escape from a Japanese group culture for a more individualized lifestyle. In the early days in Japan, he was considered a black sheep or a punk in the literary scene. He didn't fit in very well. He fled Japan and went to Italy, where he wrote Norwegian Wood. Most of his characters listen or read Western music and literature. This escape is also apparent in his setting, isolated locations in the mountains and forests. So deep down, Murakami is trying to run away from socio-cultural constraints of being Japanese in a highly group-oriented society with a strong Confucian hierarchy. Confucius, the ancient Chinese philosopher who influenced Japan, promoted social harmony through hierarchical social institutions like family, state, and other group entities. This rigid structure can have a deep psychological impact in a globalized world that promises all kinds of individual freedom. Kafka on the Shore is a good example. Kafka runs away from his tyrannical father. Murakami once said that he finds it therapeutic to create characters who are different from him. So Murakami is a man on the run from social constraints and reality itself. He calls Kazuo Ishiguro, the Japan-born British author, his best friend. The irony is that Murakami, while living in Japan, is running away, but Ishiguro, while living in the UK, is longing for Japan. I discussed this in more detail in my video on Ishiguro, which you can watch here. East meets West. Murakami combines Western writing style with Japanese sensibilities. He speaks English and has translated the works of F. Scott Fitzgerald, Raymond Chandler, and J.D. Salinger. The title of his non-fiction book, What I Talk About When I Talk About Running, comes from a Raymond Carver short story titled What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. He uses American expressiveness to liberate his Japanese characters. His characters are mostly Japanese, but they are very open with their feelings and thoughts. High and low. Like the Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky, who combined crime genre to tell deeper psychological stories, Murakami uses high culture of music, opera, and literature in wacky and lowbrow environments. He says, "I think if you are a fiction writer and you are too intelligent, you cannot write. But if you're stupid, you cannot write. You have to find a position in between. That's very difficult." He has found the balance between the highbrow and lowbrow, so his readership is wide-ranging. There's something for everyone in his novels. Free-flowing. Murakami says, "I don't research when I write novels because imagination is my asset, my gift. I want to work it fully." His writing, characters, world he creates are all very fluid. Most Japanese people don't say what they feel or think. Japanese writers like Yasunari Kawabata captures this the best, so you have to read between the lines. Murakami's characters tell you pretty much everything. They appear plain on the inside, almost inside out. Everything is flashed out so they don't have an inner soul or personage, it appears. In Japanese culture, there are two selves, Honi, which means the inner true self, and Tatamae, which means the outside the house self or social self. Japanese people are considered very reserved and they rarely discuss their true feelings and opinions in public. Murakami's characters are very feline, free-flowing. Murakami has a cat as a pet, so perhaps he gets inspiration from the pet. Cat is a free spirit. Search. In Murakami's novels, there is always someone or something missing. This search is in fact a deeper search for meaning in life, something lost. For thousands of years, we believed in fixed religious worlds and social structures. Now we feel dislodged, no longer anchored down, alienated from social conventions. A century ago, people took refuge in nationalism, but now deep down, we don't care about nationalism either. But everything around us tells us to conform and be conventional and follow rules. Murakami invites us to be free. He touches a chord with our own search for something we're missing, a meaning, a person, a purpose. How culture. Aristotle came up with a formula for storytelling in Greek tragedies. Every tale has a beginning, middle, and end, just like life itself. You're born, you live, and then die. Murakami's storytelling follows this convention for the most part, but his genius is that he makes the journey or the process interesting. His endings are not very strong or memorable, but you always know his style. His novels are a kind of lived experiences. In that sense, it's very Japanese. The Japanese culture emphasizes on how more than why. Western culture is outcome driven, while Japanese culture focuses more on the etiquettes, rules, and the process. How to do something is as important as the outcome of it. Murakami's storytelling is addictive because he grabs your attention in the detail. If you skim through his novels, you realize they are quite cliched. Always boy meets girl, or vice versa, or someone chases or being chased. But through exquisite details and storytelling, he entertains us to read to find out how things are done. Cause. Murakami lacks a clear conviction. Some writers have deeper political or even ideological convictions, like Dickens writing about the poor or Khalid Hosseini writing about the weak and the suffering. Murakami doesn't seem to care about any cause or even humans. In his novels, humans and animals are almost on equal footings. Perhaps his lack of a clear conviction prevented him from winning the Nobel Prize. I think Murakami is interested in telling a good story, not promoting social causes like class or gender inequality or any other issues such as the environment. He is simply trying to make sense of existence in a complex and confusing world of ours. Small is big. If you have read Murakami, you will notice that as soon as you open a page, you will feel right in the scene. He has the ability to take you to that moment. This stems from the fact that he focuses on the small rather than the big picture. In 1995, after the gas attack in Tokyo, Murakami tried to find newspaper articles about how it felt to be in the moment inside the underground, to feel the smell, the noise, and the chaos, but he couldn't find anything concrete. So he went and interviewed the people who were at the scene to write his book Underground, to capture the smaller details. In his novels, he grabs your attention by focusing on the small. It is often the case with Murakami's novels. You remember a particular scene like fish raining from the sky or a man talking to a cat, but it's more difficult to remember an entire story. So his attention to details and focus on the simple and small is very unique and fresh. If you summarize his novels, they sound very bizarre and somewhat dull, but it's the focus on small things that makes his novels so mesmerizing. You feel like in the moment, so the small is big for Murakami. Irrationality. One thing unique about Murakami's novels is that the characters make decisions not based on reasonable, rational, logical way of thinking, but more based on things that are completely random. For example, in this latest novel, Killing Commendatore, a woman divorces her husband because she had an unrelated dream. Or when the narrator decides to quit painting, his agent doesn't ask why. In Western culture, the emphasis is on knowing the reason behind every action that drives science and technology. But in life, and especially in human psyche, things often don't make sense. You can't choose your family, your country, language, even your job. You apply for 10 jobs, you get one. What if you chose the other job? You would meet different people and you would have a different life. In Murakami's novels, a small incident, painting, or a person that you meet can change your life in a way that you had never imagined. This randomness is exciting. In Western crime fiction, you often hear detectives saying they hate coincidences. Everything has to make sense or has to happen for a reason. But Murakami's novels are full of magic, unexplained randomness that makes him unique. Just as I discussed in my video on Dostoevsky, human behavior for the most part is irrational and often don't make sense, and Murakami captures that. Lack of emotions. In Murakami's novels, characters don't show their emotions. They are mostly cool and calm and often very understanding of other characters. In Japan, you are not meant to show your emotions in public. For example, in his last novel, Killing Commendatore, when the man hears his wife is having an affair with somebody else, he doesn't get angry. He just leaves the house without showing any sort of emotion, then starts driving around Tokyo for no reason while listening to music. It's very rare to find any Murakami character who is very hot-headed or lose temper in the presence of others. Simple is beautiful, Wabi-sabi. His writing style and language are very simple. He holds your hand all the way. If you ask a Japanese person for direction in Japan, they are most likely to walk with you to the place or draw a map for you. Murakami does this in his novels, so you don't have to go back in the book to see if you missed something. His characters, scenes, and settings are very simple places. Wabi-sabi is a Japanese concept of beauty and simplicity, like the Japanese garden that has only rock and sand. Murakami doesn't do research, so that liberates the reader to not take things seriously. You can feel Murakami is enjoying the writing process himself, and this in turn is passed down to the reader to enjoy reading them. It's like when musicians performing, if they are having fun, so will the audience. He says, if you are a reader and I'm a writer, I don't know you, but in the underground world of fiction, there's a secret passageway between us. We can send messages to each other subconsciously. Murakami dives into his subconscious and finds things and brings them to us in the simplest way possible. It's through our shared human subconscious that we find his writing so appealing, because that's also our subconscious, lost in this bewildering and confusing world. Thank you for watching.